What's up, everybody? Welcome to Liberty Vault Live. Hope you guys all had a good Christmas break and a New Year's break. Let's get this started. I just can't wait to see how they spin this.
War wasn't always the American way.
I don't blame people for being skeptical of any FBI narrative. We have a mass noticing going on. This presidential administration hasn't enacted the agenda it campaigned on. If wars can be started by lies,
Peace can be started by truth.
no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Liberty Vault Live. I hope you all have a great new year and had a good new year, good celebration with your family, had a good Christmas time. Hope it was a time of rest after a long year of hard work or hard dedication to something, hopefully peace if you're watching this. Peace in opposition to the deep state, maybe the distant lifestyle. I really appreciate everyone being here. I'm kind of getting over a bad flu, and probably some of you have detected that in my latest videos. And yeah, it's been a crazy one for me. I think I've had influenza type A. It sounds like it's sweeping through the entire United States at this point. And I'm not the only one with it. I won't be the last one with it, but starting to recover a little bit more now. It's been a fun time to follow some interesting stories right now. There's a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. And as we typically do in these types of shows, we will go through two featured stories. We have the prospects of a new war, renewed war with Iran, which many of us have warned about for a long time, even since that debacle that was the 12-day war. I don't think it was just 12 days, by the way, back in the summer. And some of the revelations that we've gotten from the latest tranche of the Epstein files release, or should I just call it Epstein files cover-up? It sure seems to be a reluctant DOJ that unleashed any of those files for us to see, right? So as we typically do, I'll dedicate something like 10 minutes to each of those stories, discussing the latest in each and why I think they're pertinent and relevant and certainly worth talking about today. And then I'll prioritize answering super chats and questions from membership. If you're a member, you can do that right now. Please like this stream right now if you can. That'll help get it going. And please consider becoming a member, because if you become a member, you'll have immediate access to all my videos before they go live for everyone else. There's actually one in the hopper right now where I'm reacting to a clip between Ian Carroll and Tucker Carlson talking about the Charlie Kirk assassination narrative and the FBI narrative. And let's just say, I think it's proper to be skeptical about any FBI narrative, as I said in my intro there. By the way, props to Dan Smots, the great Dan Smots, for making that intro. He can make anyone look cool, apparently. If you can make me look cool, like, holy crap, that video is awesome, if you ask me. And I got the best guy in the business to do it. So we'll cover those two stories, and then I'll answer super chats. We'll take this 2 hours or so, as long as there's interest and as long as I have a voice. My voice is not quite as strong as it typically is, given the recovery from illness right now, but hopefully it will sustain itself a little bit. So welcome to the show. If you're just joining in, really appreciate it. Let's start with our first featured story. So the prospects of a new war with Iran. So if you've been following this, the real American president, Benjamin Netanyahu, went to the presidential mansion just a few days ago. I mean, the kind of quasi-U.S. president. Oh, no, he is really the U.S. president. I think it's something like his 6th visit, by the way, to the White House under the Trump presidency. It's either 5th or 6th, and it basically breaks a record, I believe, for a number of times that a foreign official or head of state comes to the United States and meets in the White House. Pretty indicative of where this president's priorities are. And to be frank, it's not just exclusive to him. We have an Israel first mentality that's pervasive through both parties, with only some aberrations resisting it. And he went to the White House, and what did we get? We got, in perfect timing, after strikes on Nigeria during Christmas, in which Trump, said, "I'm so glad to unleash these strikes against Nigeria. They're persecuting Christians and they deserve it," on Christmas, opening up a new theater of war there. And after a looming regime change, which is probably taking place as we speak in Venezuela, after a bombing campaign that sunk several boats ostensibly because they're carrying drugs, which they aren't. You know, fentanyl and cocaine doesn't come from Venezuela, and maybe many of the ships that have been sunk would have had to refuel something like 20 times to even get to the coast. That's just a farce to try to regime change Venezuela, as the neocons like Marco Rubio has always wanted to do. Trump decided to bomb Venezuela, the docks, Venezuela proper, on the land for the first time, and has even admitted this in press conferences. Well, what do you get amidst all this timing, with wars raging on there, the genocide in Israel still being bankrolled by the United States despite a tenuous ceasefire that doesn't solve anything, and continuing the proxy war in Ukraine? You get the prospects of a new war with Iran. After the 12-day war, Trump basically came out in this propaganda pitch that we've set Iran back decades. Their nuclear weapons program is completely demolished. We took out 3 nuclear facilities, and by all accounts, they did take out a lot of those facilities, but it was indications, including satellite evidence, that showed that you could see trucks and motorcades arriving at one of those 3 facilities, Fordo, in the weeks in advance. So it seems like they smuggled out a lot of the enriched uranium. Now, on top of that, it seems true that they didn't have a nuclear weapons program whatsoever, and there was no evidence they reconstituted that. That, even according to Tulsi Gabbard in her annual threat summary that she presented to the U.S. Congress, something like, I think, 8 or 9 weeks before the U.S. decided to strike Iran. So the propaganda for this was, we have to assist Israel, take out their nuclear capabilities. They pose a threat to the United States, even though, of course, they didn't pose a threat to the United States. And this has been a war that the neocons have always wanted for my entire lifetime. And they're not going to stop. Nothing's enough. They're going to keep clamoring for it. And what you saw here was new clamoring for it. But this time, the propaganda took a slightly different direction, because Trump, to maintain the original propaganda that he had asserted back in summer, he can't just say, oh, they're on the cusp of a nuclear weapon again, even after I assured you that we took out their nuclear weapon capabilities. No, he shifted a bit, and we've seen his shifting when it comes to his meetings with Netanyahu, and also in the press conferences that followed. So let's take a look at some of the things that Trump said to the press corps in questioning about this and how Trump responded. And I'd like to say, you know, there was something of just basically a categorical commitment to renewing strikes in Iran again on behalf of Israel, and it's frankly pretty terrifying. So let's take a look at that with this first clip. The audio in these clips aren't perfect, but I think it's actually reasonable. So here's what he said when talking about the threat of war in Iran again. Here's our boy Clint Russell. By the way, he'll be on the show in a few weeks. We have him scheduled. Let's see what Trump said when questioned about this to a reporter.
Are you concerned that Israel is not moving quickly enough to phase 2 of the peace plan?
Well, I'm not concerned about anything that Israel's doing. I'm concerned about what other people are doing or maybe aren't doing. But I'm not concerned. They've lived up to the plan. They're strong. They're solid. And sometimes they don't understand when somebody violates something that you want to give them a second chance. Well, we'll give them a couple of second chances. But no, Israel's lived up to the plan 100%. Don't forget, we made the plan possible by taking out
That's the plan.
Iran. And speaking of Iran, I hope they're not trying to build up again, because if they are, we're going to have no choice but very quickly to eradicate that buildup. So I hope Iran is not trying to build up, as I've been reading that they're building up weapons and other things. And if they are, they're not using the sites that we obliterated, but they're using possibly different sites. We know exactly where they're going, what they're doing, and I hope they're not doing it, because we don't want to waste the fuel on a B-2. It's a 37-hour trip both ways. I don't want to waste a lot of fuel. Okay?
Sorry, I was muted there, but wow. I mean, this is crazy. He actually said that if they rebuild, we'll strike them again, making it unequivocal. It was just so crazy to hear him say that because he shifted the propaganda. It's like, what do you mean if they rebuild? I thought you set their nuclear weapons program back decades. That's what you told the press corps after the 12-Day War. That's insane. That's not something that we can not take notice of, but you can see how the propaganda shifts as it gets into him clarifying this and what that means. And of course he says, I don't have any problems with Israel. It's like, yeah, Trump, we know that. You didn't exactly have to explain that part. You boast about how much you give to Israel on behalf of Miriam Adelson. But here's Trump clarifying what he kind of meant about that here in another clip, talking about what would it take for him to recommit to new strikes against Iran. And this other clip, standing right beside America's real president, Benjamin Netanyahu again.
Iran, if Iran will not have a deal, if Iran will continue with their ballistic missiles and also nuclear weapons.
If they will continue with
Yeah.
the missiles, yes. The nuclear, fast. Okay? One will be yes, absolutely. The other was, we'll do it immediately.
Mr. President, one of us from China attack on Iran if Iran will not.
All right, so that was kind of hard to hear, but what the reporter is asking is, what if Iran reconstitutes and rebuilds their ballistic missile capabilities or their nuclear capabilities? And Trump is saying, yeah, we'll commit to strikes if they rebuild their ballistic missile program or their nuclear program, and the latter would be a fast strike. Right, so ballistic missiles are the casus belli to strike Iran now. Their only deterrent, the thing that they've never lost. They've always had nuclear missile capabilities. And guess what? They have a nuclear energy program, just like basically every modern nation, to deliver energy to their people. That's not going to end. They've always maintained the right to do that. Guess who isn't compliant with the nuclear proliferation treaty? It's Israel, the country that literally has a secret nuclear weapons program, one that JFK, by the way, tried to shut down just months before his untimely death, perhaps not coincidentally so, by the way. But they waged war on behalf of the idea that this other power in the region, their arch nemesis Iran, had a secret nuclear weapons program. So you can see they're shifting the goalposts from nukes to ballistic missiles. Now it's enough that they literally just have ballistic missiles that we're going to recommit to strikes against Iran. This is a terrifying prospect and pretty much guarantees additional war with Iran on behalf of the Zionists, on behalf of the Israel Firsters, the Ben Shapiroites, the Mark Levins, the Laura Loomers, everyone who desperately wants regime change there. Actually, Mark Levin just tweeted about his desire, his aching for regime change in Iran and how great it would be. And I responded, well, what's not to love about this after Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and Libya and Somalia? What could go wrong with another regime change operation? Oh, and Ukraine in 2014, by the way. All those were just so wise and made all those countries so much better without losses of life or treasure. They didn't bankrupt the country. They didn't cause inflation. No, what's not to love about them? And then we have Glenn Greenwald here, which I thought was a great tweet. Donald Trump talking about protests in Iran. If you're not familiar, there have been some recent protests in Iran. From what I gathered, something like 40 to 60,000 people. And they seem to be centered upon an inflation crisis, which is partially their government's doing. They're inflating their currency via their central bank. But a lot of that is in response to the U.S. sanctions regime. And by the way, that gives the Iranian regime, the Ayatollahs, the excuse to pin all economic blame on the United States, even though that's not true. It arms them with that propaganda weapon against their own people. But also that there's a water crisis in Iran due to famine and central management of resources. It's a very centrally planned economy with 60% of it planned out by the government. It's caused shortages and some issues that have caused some people to rise up. Now, there's no evidence that they're trying to overthrow the government, but of course, Trump is going to use that as propaganda, additional propaganda layers to try to support new U.S. strikes in Iran. Now, I noticed that he doesn't do this when there are far more protesters in his own country, say under like the No Kings protests, where something like 5 to 7 million people took to the streets. That's not impetus that the people are upset against Trump or anything like that. That's not impetus for something that should show you that the people are ready for regime change. No, not at all. But this 40 to 60,000 mass in, I think, a country of something like, I think they have 16 billion people in Iran, 19, something like that, is enough to use this as propaganda. So here's Glenn Greenwald with the wisdom he always has, saying, hey, the Trump administration's ready to bring freedom and democracy to Iran. What could go wrong? Because that's always worked. You know, it only took 20 years, billions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, and 4 presidents to replace the Taliban with the Taliban in Afghanistan. Let's just repeat that in Iran. Well, that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing and expecting different results. But that is what we are getting from this atrocious desire to enact regime change in Iran. And the Trump presidency seems totally complicit with this, totally won over by the neocons who have stolen, you know, the entire movement around right-wing populism under Trump, the MAGA movement, and completely co-opted it and assimilated it into the Israel first neocon methodology, the neocon mantra that Trump campaigned against 3 times, by the way. If you'll remember, in the last weeks of the last campaign, he specifically, you know, raised his indignation toward Liz Cheney in particular, saying, hey, if she was on the front lines of the wars she votes on, I think she'd have a different idea of how to operate in terms of U.S. foreign policy. But we see Trump supporting this. We see him Netanyahu first to the core. I saw Max Blumenthal talk about this a little bit, and he thinks that this is indicative of trying to rally the pro-Zionist donors to support Trump-aligned candidates in 2026. I think that's part of it. But Americans are peeling away from this and taking notice, especially younger Americans that want nothing to do with this. There's really no popular support outside of the banks, the military-industrial complex, and the niche Israel firsters for regime change in Iran. It has virtually no constituency outside the bloodthirsty and the aligned lobbies with the bloodthirsty. So that's what we're getting there. And that's what I have to say about that. Hopefully it doesn't come soon. I'm actually quasi-surprised they haven't renewed strikes again, but they've always clamored for them, and they always will, because that is the only thing the Hasbara, Greater Israel narrative will accept. Regime change in Iran at all costs. They want nothing more, nothing less. And guess what? They'll take American treasure and boots on the ground if they can. Because Netanyahu wants that instead of sending the IDF there. He wants to preserve the IDF for his own Greater Israel carve-outs in the West Bank and Syria and Lebanon and Somaliland, where he wants to build a new base. That's what he wants. So he'll do anything he can to extract U.S. resources and manpower to bring this Zionist dream to fruition. Regime change in Iran. That's what we're going to get. Now, that's a concerning story, and it's actually been pretty big in the news, but I do want to get over to the Epstein stuff, but before I do that, I'll just say I am accepting super chats after I cover the Epstein stuff. We'll go into super chats. I'll prioritize answering those questions and reading those questions, giving you a shout out if you want, and people that are members, I will prioritize their questions as well. Alexander Tirado, thank you for becoming a Liberty Soldier. If you're watching, I really appreciate that. Oh yeah, and by the way, I know how to display comments on the screen now, so that's a lot better. So, all right. So let's get into the Epstein files revelations. Goody, 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 because a lot happened while, you know, we had the Christmas break, the New Year's, etc. A lot of news as it comes to this. And the short of this is that Kash Patel and the DOJ, Pam Bondi and Dan Bongino, lied through their teeth about Epstein. And in particular, they lied through their teeth about having no evidence that Epstein had co-conspirators, was trafficking minors to other parties. Actually, it turns out in these document releases, They not only entertained that there was sex trafficking, but he did have as many as 10 co-conspirators, and FBI agents were openly talking about this. This despite Kash Patel's actual under oath testimony to the contrary. And I want to show you guys this because this has been shown throughout the internet. It's gone around for a while. There's a viral video of Kash Patel in a congressional committee talking about exactly this. So let's get into that, actually. I want to talk about this video and just show you what Kash Patel was asked about this prior to this tranche of releases, and then what he said and how we know he's a bold-faced liar. So let's watch this. This is in one of those committees talking about this.
Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
So listen to that. Not only does Kash Patel deny that the FBI has any evidence that Epstein trafficked minors to other people, that's not in the case files. Well, both of those assertions are total lies, and we found that out through the Epstein file releases. And it didn't take us long, by the way. These files had something like over 1 million files in total, and there were many redactions, some of which you were able to take away if you had just copy and pasted those portions of the PDF onto another file. It was actually pretty easy to do that. And that's been a big blessing. It's raised some questions over, well, were there actual quasi, if you want to call them whistleblowers within the government that helped assure that? Maybe that's so, but it sure seems to be the case on a lot of these documents. You can see what they actually said, but even some of the documents that were filled with redactions, you can still glean the fact that Kash Patel is a total liar in this. And I'll show you why here in a second, because we have learned that the Epstein files themselves have FBI agents talking about, again, the idea that Epstein was partaking in sex trafficking and there were as many as 10 co-conspirators. And let's show you that. So here's one document talking about this. This was from ABC and in Columbus, I believe, or at least in Ohio, talking about this. And that's pertinent because Epstein's primary benefactor, Les Wexner, still lives in Ohio. I think he still has the biggest mansion in the entire state. He lives in New Albany. Epstein used to have a mansion right next door, by the way. And Epstein got a lot of his wealth inextricably from Les Wexner. And not only that, Les Wexner gave him power of attorney, let him take out loans in his name, make many business decisions for his brands. This was a big mogul. He owned L Brands, that's Abercrombie and Fitch, I think Victoria's Secret, Bath and Body Works, I think, and many other brands under that umbrella. But here we have some of these emails from FBI New York. Look at this in the actual document. It's signed by FBI New York. This is an FBI agent from New York talking about co-conspirators here. Some of them are named. Attempts to Maxwell are being made in Boston today to contact Maxwell. When this was before she was prosecuted, she was being entertained as a co-conspirator. Well, we know about her. But what about Jean-Luc Brunel? We actually have information on him. He was a Frenchman and modeling scout, kind of a modeling mogul, the ultimate cover story for a pedophile like Epstein. And by the way, that's what Epstein tried to do at Victoria's Secret. He posed as a model scout to try to get close to some of these women, and that totally creeped them out. But they talked about as many as 10 co-conspirators. Now, what's interesting about this number of 10 is we don't know all of their names. We do know in these documents, though, that Maxwell's named, Jean-Luc Brunel is named. Jean-Luc Brunel was apprehended after Epstein's death, when, Epstein killed himself, and was found to have killed himself in the exact same manner as Epstein. He was found to have hung himself in a cell in France. The French authorities had captured him. So he's a known co-conspirator with Epstein that the FBI was talking about. And these documents point to Les Wexner as a co-conspirator with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, this is interesting, especially because the FBI, to our knowledge, has never interviewed Wexner. And if they did ever interview Wexner, none of that interview survives. There's no information about it. He's lived a low profile. He's basically, disappeared off the face of the earth despite being one of the most rich people in the United States, one of the biggest Jewish benefactors in terms of pro-Israel philanthropy too. And yet the FBI is talking about him as a possible co-conspirator. Why were they talking about him in that way? Well, they actually sought to locate these individuals, including Brunel, who was still alive at this time, Maxwell, and Wexner, to subpoena them and get their testimony in front of a grand jury to investigate how big this octopus went, how far these tentacles went in this sex trafficking operation. But guess what? Epstein killed himself. What happened after Epstein killed himself? Mysteriously, inexplicably, when some of the cameras malfunctioned, no one had ever died in MCC, the place that he died in, and where he was, the oversight for it was by William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, who, by the way, his father gave Epstein his first job. What happened after that? Did they follow these leads? Did they still try to seek these people out, interview them, subpoena them for grand jury testimony? No. They didn't. The investigation died with Epstein. So that was enough to get the FBI to say, hey, there's nothing to see here. We're not going to investigate this any further. And that just defies everything Kash Patel just said. Because he said that the case file doesn't indicate we have any evidence of co-conspirators or that there was sex trafficking beyond Epstein. Well, this document alone shows that, but there are other documents too. Here's one from People talking about the same subject and talking about the fact that this story was a major one. It was talked about behind the scenes by the FBI. So if we could take this in isolation and say, hey, maybe Kash Patel wasn't privy to one of these documents, but there were, 3, 4, 5 documents all talking about this. The idea that this went far deeper and far wider than Epstein himself. And Kash Patel just blatantly lied about it on the stand. So here's another article talking about that. The FBI tracked down a majority of the 10, with an agent writing that 3 have been located in Florida and served grand jury subpoenas. 1 in Boston, 1 in New York City, and 1 in Connecticut were located and served. But again, there's no evidence that despite serving them subpoenas, that this was ever latched onto as truth. Instead, they tried to bury this completely. They buried the lead on Epstein. So in a just world, in a virtuous world where government actually represented our interests in Congress and the presidency and the bureaucracy, I know it's funny to even say that. Imagine a world where that happened. Immediately, there would be charges against Kash Patel, against Pam Bondi, against Dan Bongino for covering this up, and impeachment proceedings would begin immediately. Where are the Trumpians on that? The ones that wanted to bring transparency to the Epstein case, no matter who was in the file, let's see it. We couldn't stop hearing that for about 4 years, from 2021 to early 2025. Well, instead of bringing transparency, Trump brought the swamp. He brought the cover-up. He bled political capital for 11 months to make this into a scandal. It was all of his own doing. He made many missteps along the way in trying to do it, having the most absurd messaging to try to support that narrative as possible, that there was nothing there, no blackmail, no connections to foreign intelligence, even though there's something like 8 or 9 connections to Israeli intelligence that Ryan Graham and Murtaza Hussein have uncovered. The fact that he said it is a Democratic hoax, despite the fact that the Democrats didn't wield this as a weapon against Trump, they chose Russiagate instead. The fact that he said that these were boring, there was nothing to see here, and then at one point Truth Socialed that, hey, you're not my real supporter if you want the truth about the Epstein scandal, or if you want to go down this alley, you're not my real supporter. He really Truth Socialed that. And just a few days ago, he even kept this Democratic hoax line going as if it was working, or that people didn't see through this for what it was. Well, again, in a just world, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and Pam Bondi at the very least would be impeached. And you would have virtuous people holding them accountable for the lies they told under oath. This is perjury. And yet we're just supposed to accept this wholesale because, this the Trumpians have their guy. Their cult of personality is enough that we wouldn't apply the same principles and standards to the Trump deep state that we would the Biden deep state. Well, that's what you get. The deep state remains the same regardless of the names. That's one of the messages I try to preach here, that you're not going to reform these evil institutions like the FBI and CIA. They're populated with evil people that want to subvert your liberties, run psyops on you, and engage in regime change operations overseas, and will do whatever they can to drum up propaganda to support any of that, even if it comes to covering up a giant sex trafficking ring that was likely part of a blackmail operation on behalf of Israel. And that's what you get. And we're supposed to have no questions about this. It's not even being widely covered, at least the Israel connection with Epstein, and we can talk a little bit more about that. But this is truly criminal behavior, and I'm sorry, it just epitomizes the deep and dark underbelly of the swamp and the pernicious attitudes that you get from this presidential administration. And it's not unique to him. It's not like Biden was forthcoming on the Epstein story either. It's not like Biden promised answers. Trump's big mistake was promising answers and then not only not delivering on them, but actively covering them up and having his subordinates lie about them in congressional committees, again. But there's lots of other angles that the Epstein files have shown. One of them was that there was an operation on behalf of Netanyahu that connected Netanyahu himself, the current U.S. president, and I say that quasi in jest, but also the Prime Minister of Israel, to an extent that had rarely before seen. Now, Netanyahu at one point tried to use this as a weapon against Ehud Barak, who's part of the Israeli left, because Epstein was closer with Ehud Barak. Ehud Barak lived with Epstein for prolonged periods of time out of his house in Manhattan, the one that Wexner gave him, and they were very close. They were involved in many operations, including ones that tried to benefit off of the Syrian civil war with Ehud Barak. He drafted at least one speech for Ehud Barak when Ehud Barak was the defense minister after his tenure as prime minister. He actually actively worked with Ehud Barak to broker security agreements with both Mongolia and the Ivory Coast for Israel as well. But we also know that Epstein took a part in a role in trying to finance what is called the Leviathan Field. Leviathan Field is a oil-rich region to the west of Haifa, in which Epstein linked up with Netanyahu to try to drum up supporters, drum up investors in this project to fund this. And what's so crazy about this, as Murtaza Hussein showed, that Netanyahu had a speech on December 17th, that's just, 2 weeks ago, in which he announced that there was a $35 billion deal to sell natural gas to Egypt as part of this Leviathan Field. Well, this entire project began more than a decade ago, and guess who spearheaded it? Good old Jeffrey Epstein, who was much closer with Netanyahu than we ever thought before. And also this article gets into another fact that's very interesting, and that's the fact that Netanyahu had very strong links to J.P. Morgan. That's been known about, but this also details the fact that Epstein himself arranged a meeting between Netanyahu, the current prime minister of Israel, and J.P. Morgan banking executives that were part of this development project, part of this project to spearhead the investment opportunity in Leviathan Field, a natural gas, bastion. That's what we get from this article. So thanks to Ryan Grimm and Murtaza Hussein, it's a really great article, but there's more than that. There is connections to the Clinton Foundation. So we know that Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's private jet many times. They maintained a close friendship. We also know, despite them trying to cover this up, that Epstein had, I believe it was 14 individual meetings with Clinton in the Clinton White House during Clinton's presidency, arranged by a guy named Mark Middleton. Now, you might not hear him. His name isn't as closely connected to the Epstein saga as some others, but Mark Middleton, mysteriously, when Epstein was going down for his crimes and after he had killed himself, I think it was in 2021 or 2022, was found to have been hung by a tree, I believe with a belt, but also with a shotgun blast to his chest. So the official narrative is he was both shot and hung at the same time. Kind of raises a few eyebrows, and there's supposed to be nothing wrong with that either. Well, this new article shows how, despite the fact that Clinton said he cut off ties with Epstein in something like 2002 or 2003, there were many cases in which Clinton, the foundation, remained in contact with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell as late as in 2006. And we get some of these pictures, I believe some of these pictures at the hot tub with the, redacted screenshot there. I think some of these were supposed to have taken place in the late 90s or early 2000s. They're not dated, and it's hard to know exactly why. But after that fact, for several years later, Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein worked closely with the Clinton Foundation, maintained in contact with the Clintons, and there's evidence that Hillary Clinton was worried that her connections to Epstein would come out during the 2028 presidential campaign. Now, of course, we know that Barack Obama won the nomination then, but that was on the table, and this was discussed in some of these email leaks. So that's what you get from this. That's another story, thanks to Ryan Graham and Murtaza Hussain. Now, there's yet another one in the Epstein saga. This one came out 2 weeks ago. I think I've referenced it in other videos pertaining to Epstein. But we know that Epstein had a tangential role in Iran-Contra, at the very least. It's a little bit murky how close he got to the actual movement of money and arms in that conflict, but he was close to a lot of people close to it, including Douglas Leese, the arms trafficker that worked with Britain and China, who he worked for a time, and this is what talks about that there. He also worked for a guy named Pottinger, Stanley Pottinger, who was a key figure in Iran-Contra as well, working on that. And if you're not familiar what Iran-Contra was, it was a scandal that contradicted U.S. law by using Israel as a middleman to sell arms to the Iranians during the Iraq-Iran war, toward the end of it, in fact, and then sell the proceeds of those arms to Contras fighting the communist-backed Sandinistas in Nicaragua and also the Angolan rebels. Well, Epstein was close to several people, including Pottinger, Leese, and Adnan Khashoggi, the rich Saudi playboy that was involved in that operation as well. He was kind of the consummate stereotype of a rich Saudi investor, was an arms trafficker. He actually sold his yacht to Trump down the line after this. So Epstein was close to these figures. It's not fully known how involved he was in Iran-Contra, but what's interesting about this story is that Murtaza Hussain and Ryan Graham, I'm going to scroll down a little bit because it's a lengthy article, it had him getting involved with the original planes from the airline that took part in Iran-Contra, repurposing them for the purposes of Leslie Wexner. So instead of trafficking the arms, he shifted them into an operation mode where they would shift lingerie into East Asia on behalf of Les Wexner. And by the way, we're supposed to have no questions about this. This is supposed to raise no eyebrows. Epstein was just operating alone, no connections to intelligence services, no connections to foreign intelligence, nothing like that whatsoever, nothing to see here. Well, that's what we get from this. And there's more to it than that. There's a lot more in the files. I could do hours on this. There's more to this story, but there's a lot of people closely connected to Epstein that have never been questioned about that. I mentioned Les Wexner, but actually in his first conviction, where he signed that sweetheart plea deal in 2008, 4 other co-conspirators were named, attendants that were close to Epstein at the time, including one named Sarah Kellen. Sarah Kellen was a personal attendant to Epstein that arranged the liaisons with many of these underage girls to set them up with appointments for massages with Epstein and then the crimes. She has not been questioned at all. She received immunity back in 2008 as part of this, but she remained working with Epstein until as late as 2013. Well, she's basically fallen off the face of the earth. And again, there's no evidence that the FBI has sought her to question her, to subpoena her for Epstein's crimes that took place after his conviction and sweetheart deal. And there were likely many of those. She was one of the closest personal attendants to Epstein. She has a story to tell, certainly. But again, she's fallen off the face of the earth. She's, I believe, changed her name. And she's largely avoided public statements, though she lives between Miami and New York City, according to the information I have, and is worth something like $20 million. But let's not question her. Let's not try to get the truth out of her either, because again, there's nothing to see here. Now, there's more with these releases too. I think I've kind of gone over the time I wanted to dedicate this to, but maybe I'll continue in a future episode. But there are more to these revelations that are of interest, despite the fact that the media is covering up a lot of them. I think they're burying the real lead here. They are reporting a little bit on the co-conspirators and the FBI lying through their teeth, but of course not the Epstein-Israel connections, which are ironclad, irrefutable, and it's just undeniable at this point. I've talked about a little about them in this program. Murtaza Hussain and Ryan Grimm have divulged a lot of other information on Drop Site about those two things. So I really recommend you go to Drop Site News at some point. Give those guys a follow. They're doing awesome journalism on that aspect of the Epstein saga. But that's where we'll leave it. Hope you guys got something out of that was interesting. I will cover super chats at this point. And I think there are a few queued up here. So we will go into those first. Super chats, and I do actually think that my screen has scrolled beyond them, so I might not be able to show all of them, unfortunately. Wow. I gotta figure that out because... Wow. Okay. Well, my program doesn't show the oldest ones, but I still have a record of them on this one. So I won't be able to show the old ones right away, but if there's new super chats, I would be able to show them. So I'll read this one. So Chrono Hop says, Happy New Year, though I'm not sure it'll be much different. I feel people will toss the same two-sided coin expecting something new, pooping back and forth forever. Well, yeah, if you vote in federal elections, you kind of know... As a dissident, no matter who you elect, you always get John McCain, and I'm sorry to say you always get Benjamin Netanyahu. So you got U.S. war hawks, and then you have genocidal maniacs in Israel by default, by every U.S. vote. And that's why I think thinking and acting locally is far more superior of an approach to politics. I think actual single-issue coalitions that do get to the heart of some of these things outside of tribal left-right politics is the way to go. So yeah, I agree with you. There is a lot of pooping around. Chrono also said, I consider myself more of a progressive, but found your channel a few weeks ago because of your Fuentes commentary and wanted to see what he was all about. So yeah, man, I really appreciate your support. That's awful kind of you, and super happy to have it. People like Chrono, I love to have him here. I know there are leftist dissidents that watch this. They like my foreign policy views. I appreciate them just as much as the right-wing dissidents do, or whatever you are, an independent. If you consider yourself a moderate, I don't know, to me, I kind of lump moderates in with like the John McCain, Nancy Pelosi's, Lindsey Graham's. At least that's what the orthodox view is, a moderate. You know, someone that wants to, you know, spend the U.S. into debt and bankruptcy and also wage wars throughout the U.S. That's a moderate in left-right kind of political orthodoxy in the United States. But hey, so I appreciate that. All right, any other super chats? I don't see any others, actually, but I could be wrong. No, I do. Hermitage Prepper. So sorry, guys. I'm not sure why I'm not able to display all these. I need to check my app to make sure it's not deleting the old ones. Chat Ninja. But Hermitage Prepper, $5 super chat. I appreciate you, Hermitage. Do you think the copy-paste redaction trick was a gift from a patriotic insider? So I addressed that a little bit, but it's hard to know. I think it's possible that some people with technical wherewithal would have known that if we get these documents out, there is kind of this loophole where people can show what has been redacted, and that might yield more information to the public, that is possible. I think people with that technical wherewithal did exist, but at the same time, I can't think it was everyone in the DOJ who was in charge of prepping these documents for release. And like I said, there's over 1 million of them, literally, including, rumors, things that the FBI talked about, pictures, email leaks, etc. It's so much material to go through, and thankfully AI has helped a lot of people with sifting through a lot of this stuff. So it's possible some of them did, but I can't think that every bureaucrat had the knowledge of that to make it happen, though it certainly is possible. So there was another super chat. Happy New Year to everyone. So cool, I can get some of these up here. So Herman Munster, I really appreciate your support as a member. Happy New Year to you as well. I appreciate you, of course. Let's see, anything else? Any other super chats you guys want? Any questions you want answered? Be happy to answer those. We have Laser MC Danger with a $2 super chat. Thanks for chiming in, Laser MC Danger. Trump supporters need to apologize. We warned them. Well, yeah, but everyone becomes a dissident at a different time, right? And it's not like they were presented with great choices. Do you think that we would be talking that much differently about Kamala Harris at this point? I don't think so. I think we'd have roughly the same policies. I'm not saying that, people shouldn't feel bad about supporting atrocious politicians. They should, but I don't think the right kind of strategy or the right approach to that is just guilt trip them and say, ha, I was right, you were wrong, because nothing loses the prospect of winning them over to your side than treating them that way. Better late than never, I say. Saul of Tarsus, was on the road to Damascus after literally just days earlier, according to the traditional narratives, prosecuting Christians. And guess what? He turned his life around. Now, even if you're a Christian, you can see that as a potential archetypal story that someone who repents, turns away from the madness and murder and destruction and immorality of their past. That's worthy of welcoming with open arms as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, lots of people were right about Trump the whole way. I never supported him. You can go back to my Facebook wall, find me talking about the fact that, hey, I never liked him. I berated him from the start. I always thought he was a warmonger. And, yeah. That doesn't mean that I'm so high-minded to say, hey, I'm just going to rake people over the coals for that for life. I don't think that's the right approach. All right, Scotty Peabody. So Scotty Peabody got the super chat in. Scotty, I really appreciate you. I notice you in the comments a lot. I can display this one and all the new ones, it looks like. Well done, Dave. Great stuff. Who's Donald J. Trump protecting? Dershowitz, Bannon? I don't know. I have a feeling that it's people close to him. Could be him himself. I mean, obviously, even if he wasn't covering up for any criminal behavior with Epstein, the cover-up, the perjury is enough that he should be impeached for this too. He's also a war criminal. So for defying, what the Constitution mandates who declares war, even on that, going back to his first term, he should have been impeached for that. Instead, they impeached him for specious reasons, but I can't exactly say who he's covering for. Now, there's odious things about both Dershowitz and Bannon. A lot of people aren't carrying this as a lead, and somehow Bannon has escaped a lot of scrutiny for this. I mean, partisan reasons explain it to some extent on the right, but I'm not seeing much published material from anyone on this. But Steve Bannon was part of a resuscitation campaign to revive Epstein's image even after his first sex crimes conviction and plea bargain in 2008. Even though Bannon was privy to that, he remained very close with Epstein, and we see this from the email leaks. And at one point, he's even asking Epstein, essentially, do you have any dirt on Jerome Powell or Steve Mnuchin? Now, if you're not aware, Powell is the Fed chairman, and Steve Mnuchin was the former Treasury Secretary under Trump during his first term, which is ironic, too, because Bannon was Goldman Sachs worker at the same time, I believe, as Steve Mnuchin was. They both definitely worked for Goldman Sachs. I'm not sure about at the same time. But he's seemingly asking Epstein in one of these emails, hey, do you have the dirt on any of these guys? How can we destroy them, essentially, like implying that he might have blackmail on these people. But yeah, it's pretty vile for Bannon to have worked alongside Epstein, tried to revive his image, doing things like scrapes on websites, trying to edit certain websites so that the real truth about Epstein's crimes didn't come to life. And he remained close with Epstein till the very end. I think their last communications were even in either 2018 or 2019, and 2019 is when Epstein went down. So there's lots to see there, man. And it's pretty crazy what is being covered up. Now, let's see. If you could only read 5 books and had no access to the internet for the rest of your life, what would you choose? Oh my gosh, man, that is so tough. That's about the hardest thing to answer, but I'll do my best. Murray Rothbard's Conceived in Liberty is fantastic. I actually think I have it here. One second. Murray Rothbard's Conceived in Liberty. This is probably one of them. And look at how thick it is. So I guess I'm kind of cheating by picking this, but it's a 4-volume saga. He later wrote a 5th volume that was later released. They had to translate it based upon his notes. But this is a complete history from colonial America all the way up to the U.S. Constitution. In Volume 5, he gets into the U.S. Constitution. I think the first 4 volumes end after the Articles of Confederation. So this goes through the colonial history in every colony from the early 1600s all the way up to that time frame, and I think it's about the best history on colonial America in the world. Other than that, man, this is so tough. I mean, I think Locke's 2 treatises of government, particularly the second one, is totally timeless. Certainly so. If you're a proto-libertarian or classic liberal, that's one to have. The best economics treaty ever is probably Man, Economy, and State by Rothbard. It might be Human Action by Mises. Those are huge tomes as well. Basically both about as thick as this one. Let's see. I really like Gordon Wood's Radicalism of the American Revolution. That's fantastic. Gordon Wood in general is amazing. His Empire of Liberty is amazing too. So that's what, 4 or 5. It's so hard for me to pick this, man. There's so many good books. I think Thomas D. Lorenzo's The Real Lincoln is fantastic too. That book changed my life in so many ways. Red pilled me to the truth about Lincoln and his tyranny. So those are some of them. Maybe I'll get Thomas D. Lorenzo on the program in the future. He's the current president at the Mises Institute, and man, we'd have a good show if he was on. So I hope that answers it. All right, wins a first. Welcome, brother. Hey, thanks for the super chat. $5 wins a first. I'm a black American, age 53, who knew nothing about politics, voted for Trump, believed in MAGA. You and others have awakened me to the truth. Thank you. Wow, man. Hey, thank you. Thank you. That's kind words. I'm glad to have played something of a role in that. I'm sure it wasn't just me. I'm sure you came across other stuff, but I really appreciate the kind words here. Yeah, there's a lot of disaffected people that voted for Trump because they believed that he was going to usher in an era of transparency, an attack on the deep state, drain the swamp. And even some of us who ultimately got it right, we knew that wouldn't happen. Like, you can see what people were thinking after they tried to, destroy his life and put him behind bars. And then 4 years later, they tried to remove him from the state ballots, prosecute him, sometimes for specious reasons in that whole foray. You might think like, hey, man, they almost killed him. And I say they if you think that the original narrative about Matthew Thomas Crooks wasn't exactly plausible. As we see from Tucker Carlson's great journalism on that, there was much more to that, and possible intelligence connections to not only him, but Ryan Ruth, especially Ryan Ruth, man. That guy glows like crazy if you ask me. But there was reason to think maybe this is going to happen. I mean, I'm not saying that you're crazy if you thought that. I'm not saying you're crazy if you oppose that and say, no, there's no chance here. I'm saying there is plausible reason for a lot of people to think, hey, maybe this is the time where he truly does stick it to the deep state, for the FBI in particular, trying to truly ruin his life, his political career, and put him behind bars. But hey, didn't ultimately happen, but I'm really glad to have played a part in that. So, yeah, let's see. Anything else? I really appreciate the super chats, guys. You guys have been really good. Don't feel obligated to any super chat, but I will read your message if you do it. I just feel so blessed this year, and a lot of it's because of you guys that watch the stream, you guys that care about the content, you guys like the content, you guys chime in on the context and comments, and yeah, there's a lot of appreciation that should go around on that. I'm going to open up a soda real quick. All right, we got a Fanta here. Fanta, hopefully that will help the voice a little bit. So yeah, what we've gotten from Trump so far is cover-ups and war. Cover-ups, war, and debt, dragging the best members of Congress like Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, just digging into them and then siding with the neocons like Lindsey Graham. I mean, even those of us with particularly low expectations for Trump, I think have basically been pretty disappointed, even with virtually no expectations. Because in particular, I thought that there was a shred of a chance that we might draw down on this Ukraine war. And some people have said, oh, we are, but we really haven't. They've just built a proxy war into a proxy war by shipping the arms to Europe first. And then those arms go to Ukraine. You still end up with a proxy war with bitter relations with Russia when you could have peace. You could have not, antagonism toward a nuclear power. And then you have the neocons in the Trump administration wanting to do that same thing in Taiwan. Stick it to the Chinese by siding with Taiwan and just completely unlearn the best lessons that could have been learned from the Russian proxy war. I think that's absurd. Laser McDanger, I did not skip your super chat. In fact, I read it. I think I read it about 20 minutes ago. It's not pop. I'm in Tennessee. I lived in Minnesota a long time, so I guess I should, by Minnesota law, call it pop, but I've always thought that was retarded. I think soda sounds better, or just calling it what it is, Fanta in this case. I always hated the pop thing. It's like pop. Pop is a sound, it's not a beverage. Let's see, anything else? Grace became a Liberty General. So Grace, I really appreciate your support. Now you will have access to all my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. So enjoy those. I really appreciate your support in becoming a member. I wanted to give you a shout out there on that. Let's see. Yeah, I read your super chat, dude. For sure. I remember talking about it specifically. Oh, you did? Okay. You did have a different one, so I apologize, Laser. You did have a separate super chat, though I read your first one. So, here it is. Kamala wouldn't be pardoning thousands of criminals and protecting pedophiles to the death and protecting AI regs. Come on, man. Don't both sides this to death. No, sorry, I do think she would be doing that, just like any deep state stooge and puppet does. That's what the name of the game is. Do you think Kamala Harris would be telling the truth about the Epstein files? She served in a presidential administration where they were silent about the Epstein files. Do you think she wouldn't let tech overlords entrench themselves in the federal government? It's like too late. Palantir already did that 20 years ago. It didn't even take Peter Thiel and his support of Trump to do that. CIA was Palantir's top client for 5 or 6 years and only client after it got its start. It's all deeply entrenched. No, if you want to call it both sides to death, I'm sorry, but both sides run us into debt. Both sides run us into endless war, regime change operations, and military strikes, and I don't apologize for that opinion. So no, Kamala Harris would not be the steward of peace when she was promising everything but. Her policy on Israel was indistinguishable from Trump's. That's what she was raked over the coals by real leftist dissidents for essentially mimicking Trump's policies on that. And she committed to continuing the war in Ukraine, the proxy war, funneling, more than $200 billion. And I think Ukraine is still due to get $30 billion more. That still goes on. Trump said, and he lied about this, that he would end that day one, but Kamala Harris promised she would keep it going. So no, I don't think things would be materially different, and I think that it's preposterous to think that they would. So that's what I think. All right, so there's my rant. I swear you're trying to put me on tilt with stuff like that. Yeah, Kamala Harris would have brought in peace and prosperity. Absurd. Yeah, this is what I think. They're all the same. Protect their criminal friend. That's what I would say too. Liberty Vault, who will win midterms 2026? Well, it's pretty clear the Democrats will, right? Is anyone saying anything differently? I haven't heard a Republican say that the Republicans will win. Well, maybe Cat Turd or Posobiec or Benny Johnson are saying, yeah, the Republicans will still win the midterms. But no, at least in the House. I mean, if you had the opinion in the Senate that the Senate won't swing to the Democrats, I could entertain that because that seems like kind of plausible. But the House, I just think the Democrats are going to win, at least on this trajectory. And hey, a lot can change, but I don't think it's going to change that fast. This administration is too tarnished. I just don't see it. I can't see it at all. Imagine paying to be destroyed. Dave Benner, Liberty Vault, destroys unhinged liberal hack. That should I make that a video? Should I make that its own clip and put it out like tomorrow or something? Liberty Vault destroys unhinged liberal establishment shill. Maybe I should do that. Scott, I'm prioritizing your message. You already gave a super chat, so heard Trump's approval rating has gone up recently. Is that possible? Not that I've seen, man. Not that I've seen at all. In fact, I've seen two polls in which it was 30 and 29 recently. That's the lowest he's ever had in either term, including beneath at the time when he was impeached. And that's what you get for covering up a sex trafficking ring, signing with Netanyahu on everything, bombing Nigeria, having the idea of regime change in Venezuela on the table, continuing to bomb them, plunging the U.S. into debt with $5 trillion more dollars under the big abominable bill by, again, siding with Netanyahu on everything, rubber stamping all of the funding toward Israel, despite Israel attacking another ostensible U.S. ally in Qatar and violating his first ceasefire. Yeah, that's what you're going to get. And not every American pays attention to all that, but they sure as hell pay attention to some of that. All right, Celtic RN8. Hey, how are you doing, Monica? Thanks for joining in. I really appreciate your support. If I would have seen your message, you wouldn't even have to pay me. Monica's one of my first members. I really appreciate her. Glad you're here, Monica. You're the best. Hey, Packers. That's my nickname, I guess, because I'm a big fan. You guys know that, right? Big Packers fan. I have a hall pass for checking into Common Sense 101 late. Laser McDanger. Thank you to Go Soda Pop. Patrick Swayze, he was Pony Boy. Flash forward to Stand by Me. Well, okay. So there's a lot in this to try to break down. So Common Sense, that was Thomas Paine's moniker and his famous pamphlet calling for independence from the crowd in America. Soda pop. Okay, you say soda pop. So some people link the two terms, both soda and pop, together. I think that's at least like more plausible than just calling it pop. That's too weird. That's too much of a Northern Yankee thing. I can't do that anymore. I'm in Tennessee. I'm in Nashville now. I'm not allowed to call it pop. I just sound like a deranged Yankee who's going to vote for Mao Zedong in the next election. Patrick Swayze, famous actor. I don't know that reference about Pony Boy. Stand By Me, classic 80s film. Have seen that quite a few times. And we have Preach, brother. You got it, Monica. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your support. Monica's the best. One of the most consistent members here. One of my first members. Really appreciate you. Hope I answered your question, inquiry, tidbit, at least plausibly there. All right. Let's see. Do the British call it pop too? Is that true? Is there any British here? Can you confirm? Do you call this? What do you call this? If you're a Brit. You're a Brit. Or if you're a Scotsman. Do Brits really call it pop? I don't think the Brits do. I really don't think the Brits do. Mitchell Cohen. This is the perfect title. Liberty Vault destroys liberal hack with facts and logic, but you have to capitalize facts and logic, right? That's what I gotta do. Butterbeer. I've heard of that. Limey Brits. I can't go back all the way to the top. I gotta figure that out on Chat Ninja so it doesn't just delete all of my old posts. Dpod6392, thank you for your donation. Wow, so you gave me a donation of $2, which I appreciate, by the way, and you put in your donation message, thank you for your donation. Interesting. This is like an Inception donation. I'm not sure like how I'm supposed to treat this. Am I supposed to say thank you for your donation? Or I'm just supposed to say he gave me a message that says thank you for your donation, but he's thanking me for a donation I didn't give to him. But all right, I'm going to stop. But I really appreciate that. Brandon G27 City. Hey, thanks, brother. Really appreciate the $10 super chat. Extremely kind of you. Extremely charitable. Did you hear what Shlomo Kramer said, Mr. Vault? No, I actually don't know who that is. I'm sorry to say. Does that make me a boomer or make me live in the cave? I'm sorry. If you have a follow-up, I'll read that one too, Brandon. I'm sorry. You might not have gotten what you expected out of this super chat, but I really don't know who that is. So if you have a follow-up, Brandon, I'll read that, but I don't know who Shlomo Kramer is or what he said, or I don't know what that pertains to. I kind of feel bad. Should I Google that? Where do you hear about chips and crisps, Dave? It will blow your mind. I've heard that before, too. Is that just like potato chips, or what does that mean? I don't know. All I know about like Brits is every time I hang around them, all they say is "in it," like to confirm something they're saying. Like, you know, the sky is blue, in it. The sky is blue, in it. Water is healthy, in it. Constantly saying "in it," like as a confirmation to everything. That's what I get a lot. And cheers, mate. Cheers, mate. So when I'm talking to a Brit, I can't help but just like following every statement up with "cheers, mate. Cheers, mate." Crisps is just chips. Yeah, that's right. Chips are fries, in it, bruv. Chips is fries, in it. Yeah, that's right. Chips is crisps. So weird, man. I'm glad we separated from the crown, if for that alone. That we don't have to call our fries frickin' crisps. Because that's absurd. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm not going to accept that. That's crap. Not going to accept it. Do you ever read all of our comments after the show only, or only some of them? Only some of them. I don't go through and read all of them. There's been other streams where I read like a lot of the questions, but I'm trying to just prioritize members right now and super chats so that I can prioritize them and thank them for their contributions. You should Google it. Well, should I Google it? All right, I'm going to Google it real quick. Yeah, chips and crisps are essentially the same snack. Yeah, they're potato chips. All right. So they're not fries. I was wrong about that. Whatever. All right. In it. I gotta figure out Chat Ninja. I don't accept the fact that it's deleting all my old messages. I wanted to scroll all the way up and display other super chats. So Brandon, do you got a follow up on that one? Brandon on your Shlomo Kramer. Brankin? Did I miss Brankin? No, I talked about Brandon G27 City, if that's what you're talking about. I don't think I missed him. All right. Oh, Monica, thank you. Monica with another super chat. Packers, ask any boomer what a boomerang is. Cheers to Australia. The thunder from down under. Vinegar with our taters. Beef tallow. Oh, yeah, boomerang, man. I had a boomerang as a kid. I could never throw it right, though. Did any of you guys have boomerangs? Do you guys have boomerangs at all as a kid? Like, from down under? Like wallabies. Wallabies and wombats. Wombats are a pretty cool animal, by the way. I had a boomerang, though, but I couldn't throw it. I could never well, you could throw it, but it wouldn't come back. All right? It was asking a lot for it to come back when I was throwing it as like a 10-year-old or something. Cheers to Australia, indeed. There are several Australian viewers of this channel, and I appreciate them very much. Australia also brought us Julian Assange. And Julian Assange is one of the greatest heroes of this generation, if you're asking me. Truly. He truly is. That's why I wanted to make sure he was in my intro video, by the way, because I consider him a true hero. Because at great risk and peril to himself, he unveiled war crimes by the United States that they lied about, covered up, and tried to punish him for telling the truth over while they continued with their lies. He deserves medals in addition to his freedom and a complete pardon. So what he has is not justice. Vinegar with taters. So I know it's a Brit thing or an Irish thing to put vinegar on like your fish and chips. I like that. Like I like malt vinegar on fish and chips. Do you guys like that? Do you guys eat that? But I have that sometimes at like Irish pubs. Those are good. Brandon 27 City, here's his follow-up. Hey, Brandon, thanks, man. Dave, he said we need to control the First Amendment. He came out on an interview. He is an Israeli billionaire. Oh, wow. Wow, what a surprise there, right? After Benjamin Netanyahu is sitting around a table of influencers and saying, hey, the weapons of war change throughout time and we have to adapt to them, and one of these weapons is the information battle. So we need to hope that the TikTok purchase by the Ellisons go through. I mean, you can't make it any more clear than that. And then when he says we need to talk to Elon, what does he mean by talk to Elon? It means try to convince Elon to censor, criticism toward Israel. That's what he means. So now we have this guy, this Kramer guy saying the same. Can't say I'm totally surprised because the Zionist billionaire donor class does want to wage an information battle as they see the Israel first mentality slipping away from the younger generations primarily. It's not exclusively so, but generationally, younger people just aren't having it. It's one of the most encouraging and inspiring things to me too. So that's my response. I don't really know who Kramer is, but maybe I should, and I appreciate you letting me know that, Brandon. I'm sorry you had to pay twice. I would have read that if I would have seen it anyways, but I appreciate your donation for sure. All right. Yeah. Miss Dumb Money. My mouth dropped when I heard BB said that in our own country. Look at how brazen they are, though. We should be surprised in any just world where people are using logic and, using the facts and actually having fruitful discussions with each other, like applying like the theory of American sovereignty and allowing that to outweigh all other aspects of foreign policy. You would think so, but you know, it's the Israel lobby's entrenched capacity in this administration and in our Congress and in our lobbies and AIPAC's special carve-outs they have, right? It's the only foreign lobby that doesn't have to register under FARA, and we're supposed to never ask questions about it. I mean, at one point, yeah, your mouth should drop because that's your human instincts because it's so absurd. But then another, when you think about it, it's like, well, it just shows how powerful the Israel lobby is. And that's what you learn from the Charlie Kirk thing, too, as a microcosm to what happens in our government. Look at how many people were just seriously concerned and irate about the fact that Charlie had decided, as he said in his own words, 48 hours before his death, that he had no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause. He said that in his own words. And the Zionists close to him were not having it. Robert Shillman pulled his donations. Bill Ackman pulled his donations. He had a struggle session of sorts up at the Hamptons at Ackman's property because of this. They are very concerned that this guy, one of Israel's fiercest defenders throughout most of his political life, was turning away from this. He was starting to ask questions. And just asking questions, it is enough for them to get pissed. They want Hasbara. They don't want a debate. All right. Oh, wow. Real Bayus, man. I really appreciate the $20 super chat here, $19.99. In fact, I enjoy your takes. Wanted to show some love and wish you success in the new year. I look forward to seeing your channel grow. Dude, I appreciate that so much, man. Happy New Year to you, Real Bayus. I really appreciate that. And all the support I get here. Even if you couldn't contribute, some people are strapped. We're in an economy where, you know, they laugh at us if we don't acknowledge this is the greatest economy ever or whatever, despite looking at the grocery store prices and fuel prices whenever we fill up our cars. You know, people are strapped right now. People are going through tough times. I don't blame them, but thank you, Real. I really appreciate your donation. You could have donated to a lot of other content creators. You chose me for some reason. I love the fact that you like my takes. I really appreciate that, man, for real. Really, really appreciate that. Celtic RN8 says 1999. I don't know what that was in reference to, but... All right, let's see. Anything else? We'll probably shut down the stream here soon, guys, but I appreciate you joining. Which story are you following that's closer? Do you follow the Iran, foreign policy, Israel stuff closer, or the Epstein story closer? Let me know in the chat. I'm curious, which of those two subjects do you follow more closely? Israel stuff and Iran stuff, or Epstein stuff? Let me know in the chat. I'll be curious what people say. I'm not sure what you guys will say. And I think this is delayed by about 30 seconds or so. Yeah, we're starting to get some answers. Okay. We got one for each and people talking about other stuff. That's cool if you prioritize other issues. I don't blame you. Everyone has their own prioritization system, I suppose. But I was just curious about those two. It looks like it's about even, though. Where are you guys at right now in the world? Let me know in chat where you are at in the world right now. That I'm curious about, too. I am not from Wisconsin. I did live there for about 10 or 11 years. I lived on the western side of Wisconsin, a place called River Falls. So if you're in Appleton, other side of the state, I bet you know where that is. But Appleton, hey, you're in real Packer country, man. So go Pack, go. Hoping we do all right. I haven't been that confident since we lost Parsons especially. And then Watson got hurt and Love got hurt. Malik Willis is a really good backup, man. But I don't know if we have what it takes. Too many injuries going into the playoffs. Hate to be cynical, but I'm not. Don't have a ton of confidence in my Packers right now. All right, let's see where people are from. We got Seattle, Chicago, Blame April, Pennsylvania. We got the Appleton guy. Christo Travels. Look at this, man. This is awesome. Hey, Dave, watching you live in China. Keep up the good work and best of luck with your channel. Hey, it's the morning in China. Good morning to you. Thanks, man. I've been to China twice. I love traveling there. The people are cool. The culture's cool. If you can believe it, I love modern Chinese history too. A lot of people, I don't really talk about that much on the channel, but that's so cool to have viewers in China. Atlanta, Tel Aviv, really? Tel Aviv, man. That's interesting, man. If you're a real Israeli dissident, I think that's so cool, by the way. And there are real Israeli dissidents in Israel. Even Haaretz. If you read Haaretz, if that was written in the United States, all the articles written in Haaretz, published in the United States under a different name, people would say that's an anti-Semitic publication. Immediately they would. Because it's critical of Netanyahu and the genocide, etc. And that's Haaretz. I think that's the second biggest publication in Israel. But there are some real dissidents, man. I think that's interesting, at the very least. All right. River Falls is nice. Go Pack, brother. We are banged up, but never say never. Yeah, that's right. Actually, remember when we won the Super Bowl? In 2011. I think February 6th of 2011. One of the best days of my life. Won the Super Bowl. And I think we had like injuries to 13 starters that year. It was preposterous. And yet we had an amazing team, very good defense, very good team in general. And we won the Super Bowl. So it's possible. I don't think this team is as good as that team. I'll be rooting for the boys till the end, but yeah. All right, we got North Carolina, Southern Oregon. We got Bridgeport, Connecticut from Sea Downs. Cheeseheads, yeah. I'm a cheesehead, that's right. That's how we roll. Cheesehead for life. New York City, we got Agnostic 1957 from New York. Hope the Big Apple's treating you well. I'm from Eastern Colorado. All right, right on. England. Oh, Mama07, you're the one correcting me on like the vernacular and talking about chips and crisps. So you're the go-to authority on English lingo. So I'll defer to you from now on. What do I think of Gavin Newsom? He's a slick politician that's been through a lot of scandals, but right now, if you're asking me to, I guess, odds this, he'll probably be the 2028 Democratic nominee if I have to handicap it right now compared to the field. He's about the best they have to offer. But he's been swept up in his fair share of scandals, man. But, to his credit, and I won't credit him for much, but Gavin Newsom at least understands the fact that you have to deal with the new independent media. He started a podcast. He's actually gone on some other podcasts, including adversarial podcasts. I think one of the last podcasts that Charlie Kirk was actually on was on Gavin Newsom's podcast. So that at least tells me he's willing to confront those things in an arena that Kamala Harris never was. Kamala Harris couldn't be seen within, miles of any independent media podcast, especially in a long-form interview. And Gavin Newsom's making it clear that he is willing to do that. We'll have to see if AOC or, I don't know, Gretchen Whitmer or whoever else might be Democratic contenders are going to be willing and able to do that. But he's at least making it clear he is willing to do that, and he is basically ahead of the curve compared to a lot of Democrats in that regard right now. I think that's at least an interesting dynamic. Can't stand the guy, obviously, for obvious reasons. You guys know me. I don't like many people in Washington outside of Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who we're just going to lose in a few days, and Rand Paul. And that's about it. So, I mean, there's redeemable things to other people, but those three people, I can say categorically, like, I respect those three people. And there's not many of those people in Washington. Jay Bhattacharya is another one, if you want me to be real. So, I'm global Packers. Yeah, I guess I am. That's pretty cool, right? That there's so many people from other countries that listen to this. It is great. I get a lot of people from the EU, a lot of people from Europe. I get some Australians. That guy from China, that's the first time I've heard of anyone from China watching. I think China blocks at least American YouTube through their blockages, but I think there's ways to get around it with proxies and stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think as of a few years ago, they were blocking American YouTube. Yeah, make sure you're using your own VPN while live streaming from Tiananmen Square. I've been to Tiananmen Square twice, guys, and look at this. One of my tattoos. What is that? That's the Tiananmen Gate. I have a tattoo that's literally the Tiananmen Gate. And I've been in Tiananmen Square in Beijing twice, and I've showed people this in Tiananmen, and they get a kick out of it. I wanted to represent what I thought was an imagery of people standing up to tyranny as they did in June of '89. A young group of irate masses stood up against the communist regime and demanded their liberties. I mean, they didn't work. They were treated, horribly. Chinese eventually dispersed them, sent tanks through the streets. A lot of difference of opinions in terms of how many people were killed, whether anyone was killed in the square or it was just the side streets. A lot of debates on that, but I really love the imagery of, I think, over 1 million people standing against the tyrannical rule over them. I think that we should have more of that in the United States. It's actually kind of inspiring. Oh, wow, Race Car K, $10 super chat. Thank you, Race Car. Hey, kind of a deep question. Do you think with the transition from postal mail to email that the boom-bust economic cycles will shorten and maybe result in shorter recessions? No, under Austrian economic theory, which I adhere to generally, the business cycle doesn't really have much to do with the type of communication that Americans have. And I'm not saying it has nothing to do with it, but really it is at its base the impetus of the central bank as the catalyst for boom-bust cycles. When they inflate the currency, they create mass malinvestment. And if you're not sure what that is, it means that people buy products and services that they otherwise wouldn't if interest rates weren't artificially so low. That's what we have now, basically a 20-year addiction to low interest rates where, interest rates of like 5%, people are saying those interest rates are high. Well, no, that's because you're like chronically addicted like a cocaine addict to low interest rates because the Fed has set rates so low. But if you ask people from the early 80s, ask some of our parents that bought homes around that time, some people bought homes with, 18% interest rates. So I think it's more a result of central bank behavior, inflating the money supply, injecting more currency, especially currency that's not backed by fiat, into the financial system, and then watching the ramifications from that. Because all it is, it's like diluting milk with more water. You make it more plentiful, but that acts as a callous tax against all wealth holdings. I don't really think it's, from email, unless there's something Race Car, I'm not thinking of that in that regard, in that context. Bring it up if you think that I'm missing something, but that's my general thoughts on that. Do you think the USA is in a decline? Yeah, in some ways I do. I mean, it's a polarized country with tons of debt, a lot of divided masses. A lot of it is playing out in the political realm that isn't necessarily always playing out in the cultural realm. But certainly if you're asking like where we are on like a scale between like the Roman Kingdom, Roman Republic, and Roman Empire, I think we're in like Domitian in the Roman Empire. If you're into like Roman history, I think we're well past having a republic. It's a republic in name only. Benjamin Franklin said when he came out of the Philadelphia Convention, hey, to someone asking what kind of government system are we going to have, he said, it's a republic if you can keep it. Well, we couldn't keep it very long, and you can put the time at which it was lost at many different junctions, but I certainly think if it wasn't before 1913, it was 1913 with the advent of the central bank, the income tax, the progressive era leading into the New Deal and Great Society, and just the engine of inflation, debt, and the endless warfare state, which is brought forward by central bank printing schemes. One of Ron Paul's greatest quotes in my mind was when he said, "It is of no coincidence that the century of total war coincided with the century of central banking." And he's absolutely correct. Both the central banks and the war regime need each other like a fat kid needs bacon. That's the truth. So hope that answers that question. Wow, Brandon 27 City, welcome to Liberty Soldier. Man, I really appreciate you joining as a Liberty Soldier. Thanks for becoming a member, Brandon. I really appreciated your super chat earlier, too. You have access to my videos before they come out now permanently, as long as you're a member. There is 1 or 2 in the hopper right now. Take a look at it. I hope you appreciate it, but I really appreciate it. Love your ink. All right. Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it. Fist bump to you. Thanks. The ink is kind of polarizing, right? A lot of people don't like tattoos, but I'm glad if you love it. That was one of my first tattoos. I think I got that one in like 2008 or 2009. It's pretty old, but thankfully color sticks in me pretty well, right? I got koi here. Got this figure is from a band, Iced Earth, that I love. Maybe you guys have seen me wear their shirts. There's another koi right there. Got a dragon right here. So that arm's pretty cool. The other arm, it's like a tiger stripe, and I'd probably do this one over and get like a Japanese style. But at some point in your life, if you've been tattooed a long time, and you guys will know if you are tattooed, it's like you eventually forget that you have tattoos, or at least I do to some extent. Oh, wow, Brandon, dude, thank you so much. You gave me another super chat. You just joined as a member. Dude, I already am so appreciative of you, but you gave me another super chat, $10. Thank you, sir. Dave, even though I think the trend of support for Israel is a downward on both of the left and the right is dwindling, I hope they don't try something crazy or dangerous to retake the narrative. Yeah, absolutely. I think they kind of are, though. I mean, you're seeing the desperation and the death throes of the Israel lobby, especially in like the Zionist billionaire donor class, where they're literally buying out Paramount, the parent company of CBS. They're buying out Barry Weiss and the Free Press, putting her as editor-in-chief of CBS. It's I guess it's kind of desperate. I don't know it's that dangerous, though, because Americans just aren't watching cable news anymore. But I think the acquisition of TikTok, that is dangerous, because that is telegraphing to us that, hey, Americans saw what's going on in Gaza. They're not shutting their eyes to this stuff anymore. You can't just shove that under a rug like you did in Vietnam and the Iraq War, etc. Americans saw that, so Zionist billionaire donors like Larry Ellison, his son, Larry Ellison's the CEO of Oracle. His son bought out TikTok, and now there's a lot of evidence they're undergoing a big censorship campaign to keep that stuff under wraps. Don't keep in the anti-Israel content, the content critical of Israel that Americans saw broadcasting in 4K about the genocide that they were bankrolling through their tax money. I think that is more dangerous, because TikTok has major impact, major influence, tons of eyes on it, and that's what they're trying to do. They know they can't win in the political realm of debate anymore, because Americans have had enough. They just have to buy things out, like they buy out politicians through AIPAC. They're trying to do it. They've always done it with the media, but now they're transitioning to social media, and taking control of TikTok is a major thing in which they'll do it. So I'm with you. I think we're seeing it, though, and some of it's more dangerous than others. Much more concerned about TikTok than like CBS News and Paramount. Deep thoughts here, amen. Forensic Accounting 202, God bless Jeffrey Sachs. Yeah, I love Jeffrey Sachs, man. There's some things we disagree on. He's a globalist, kind of internationalist, but he's a non-interventionist. I believe truly in his heart he wants to do the right thing and avert war at every opportunity, just as I do. He gets to those conclusions from different reasons. Usually it's like international consensus, or kind of like an international peace kind of idealistic prospect, but to me it's just American sovereignty. There's no sense in doing that on behalf of America. What we want to get involved in regime change operations, ignore the best warnings of the best founders like Jefferson about that? It's like, no way. I get to it in a different route than Jeffrey Sachs does, but ultimately I totally agree with him on basically every avenue of war, and I agree with him more than, say, on Mearsheimer, especially on China. So you guys know I love Jeffrey Sachs. I'd love to have him on the show. I sent him an email, but it was kind of around Christmas time, if he wants to join me on the show. Man, I would love to have him on the show. I'd actually ask him about some of our differences too. It would be a good show. Hopefully I can at some point. But Sachs is a legend. Love him. If I was president, Sachs would be the Secretary of State, 100%. And again, I know we have differences. I'd instruct him, you can't lean on like the internationalist like propaganda to support your positions. It has to just be America first stuff, American sovereignty stuff. I wouldn't say, you know, you can't express your own viewpoints, but it would be more oriented in that direction. But I have every amount of confidence in him that he'd be an incredible Secretary of State. And that's why he'll never be a Secretary of State, because the deep state hates guys like Jeffrey Sachs. Race Car K, hey, totally agree about the Fed. However, let's say I bought a new house from you. Instead of waiting 5 days to receive and sign the contract, we could docu-sign it in meetings. Same for sending invoices, payments, etc. All right, so first of all, thank you again for another super chat. Holy crap, man, I don't expect that. Thanks for the follow-up. Yeah, I mean, I think the point that you're getting at here is like the lag in which you're sending signals to the market is less now than it was, say, 20 years ago, right? So over the course of like thousands or millions or billions of transactions, you know, that has an impact over time. I suspect it is. I guess the market does get signals way faster than it would have, say, 20 years ago. But I don't know if that's going to impact the boom and bust cycles themselves very much, but man, they're smarter Austrians than me. That's a question that, man, if I got Bob Murphy on here, that I'd ask him. He might come on in the future too. I bet you know who Bob Murphy is if you know about like Austrian economics and the Fed and stuff like this. So I think there might be something to that, but I might not be the smart enough guy to answer it. I think there is something to say that signals to the market are important. We need prices that aren't centrally planned, because no one can really centrally plan prices. It has to be a result of consumer behavior. And if we're sending those signals quicker, it does have economic impacts. I'm just not really sure what they are to the boom bust cycle. Dave, who do you think wins in a debate of Ben Shapiro versus Andrew Wilson, and why? Andrew Wilson, because Ben Shapiro will just call him an anti-Semite, and Andrew Wilson will actually tackle the subjects at hand. That's the short of it, right? I mean, literally, I've not seen Ben Shapiro do a debate on the issue at which he's supposed to be the most prominent at. Like, his priority issue is supposed to be Israel, the Israel connection, the alliance with Israel, or at least that's what he's marketed to be. But he never does a debate like that. He just smears people for, you know, being wrong without tackling the issues. And he makes a career out of this, never talking about the specifics of these policies, never debating them. I mean, say what you want about guys like Coleman Hughes and like Dennis Prager. I think they're terrible on the Israel policy, but they at least went to Dave Smith and debated to some extent the issues. Now, Coleman Hughes more than Dennis Prager, but at the same time, Ben Shapiro doesn't do that, and that's what has lost him so much credibility, is that he's operating in a world where you don't even have to debate. You're just going to be sided with because you're a Zionist, and all the right's supposed to be behind you for that. Well, we're living in a different world now. That's no longer the game. You can't just coast by. And Andrew Wilson, I don't know a ton about Andrew, but I know he's a good debater. He's willing to talk about the issues at hand and not just get into stupid ad hominem and like surface level insults and stuff like Ben Shapiro does. So that's what I would say. Salute, fellow cheesehead. You live is new to me. Biba Applejack. Hey, thanks, man. Go Pack, go. Let's go, man. Go Packers. I told someone earlier I'm not that confident, especially after losing Parsons and Watson getting hurt and Love getting hurt. It looks like Love's going to be back, right? Because there's a concussion. Malik Willis is good backup, but I think we have too many injuries, man. I just don't have that much faith in this team anymore. Hate to say it, our pass rush has basically disappeared since Parsons is out too. That's been rough. By the way, how's the hunting and fishing in Wisconsin? I've never done it, but it's just never been my hobbies. I'm all about, like, if you like that being your hobby, it's a cool hobby, man. I know a lot of people that are really passionate about that. It never was mine, but I know a lot of people do it, especially northern Wisconsin, for sure. You believe Jeffrey Sachs will be having coffee with Packers in the very near future? I hope, man. Jeffrey Sachs, the man. I hope I get him on. Hi, everyone from Australia. Just checking in on you crazy Yanks. Let's hope for a better year in 2026. Hey, thank you very much. Kylie Norman, I really appreciate it. Cheers to you. I don't know if you guys say cheers, mate, like the Brits do, but have a Foster's for me down under in honor of Steve Irwin. Pet a crocodile for me and throw a boomerang for me. I appreciate you. Thanks for the donation. Really appreciate that. Nothing hurts more than AR-12 in a Steelers uniform. Yeah, I mean, he's my favorite player ever, so it does kind of hurt. I like to see him succeed, though. I have to admit that. Even ever since he left, you know, I'm Packers till the end, like I assume you are if you're a Packers fan. But I like watching him, and it wasn't fun to watch him as a Jet, right? He really struggled there. First year was a joke, right? Because he got hurt, the second snap for the whole year. And then his second season wasn't very good in nondescript, so it's kind of cool to watch him play well this year. And it is still kind of weird, right? I felt the same way with Favre as a Jet and a Viking, especially when he was doing well as a Viking. So there's an odd dynamic there for sure, I would say. Man, I love football. I don't know. Football and dissident politics, it's like there's some Venn diagram there, but I don't know. I have a lot of random hobbies, man. Like I love video games, like retro video games, RPGs, like Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Suikoden. I actually have another channel called Zygor Gaming where I reviewed a lot of those games. That's one of my hobbies. And I love true crime, right? I love true crime podcasts like The Vanish, True Crime Garage, The Prosecutors, love stuff like that. Love dissident politics, love sports. I'm a foodie. I'm a total foodie. Love like gourmet dinners, love like exotic foods, stuff like that. I just have way too many hobbies, guys. So I could talk about any of that stuff. I didn't expect to really intertwine it into like this podcast and this show, but we'll wrap up here in probably like 5 more minutes unless you guys have more super chats, but I appreciate you guys being here. I'm from New York City. Jets are where QBs go to retire. Seba Applejack. Yeah, I guess you're kind of right about that. But when it came to both Rodgers and Favre, they went there to another team, though. But other quarterbacks do. I mean, Testaverde played until he was like 46 there, right? Or no, Testaverde went to like Carolina after that. So yeah, I guess some of them probably do. Who are some examples? You guys had Pennington. But didn't Pennington leave? Maybe he did retire there. You guys had Marky Mark. He left. Not exotic fruits, exotic foods. Like I love, not crazy stuff, man, but I love like, you know, sushi. I love like a lot of Chinese stuff, a lot of South American foods, Lebanese foods. I don't eat like that crazy of stuff like intestines and stuff. And that wouldn't be crazy to some cultures, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just like, I have a diverse palate. I'm pretty explorative, you know, foie gras, stuff like that. Love like sushis and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm into games. If you're talking about N64, like I was already kind of old at that time. I like A Link to the Past a lot more. I'm a big Zelda fan. Big Zelda fan. Ocarina of Time was all right, but man, like I'm a boomer of sorts, and not really a boomer, but I would be compared to a lot of people in that I didn't really like gaming's transition to 3D. It wasn't my big thing. I really appreciate how you condense longer videos. You're like Cliff Notes for alt media. Hey, thank you very much. Other people have chimed in on that too. Like they like the value of breaking down like shorter segments of long form podcasts that they wouldn't watch otherwise. And I'm glad for that. I hope they like my takes on it or think there's something interesting to come from that. But I'm glad that alone provides value too. I'm interested in that people, you know, like that. how many humans do what you are doing? I don't know. As far as podcasting, more and more, right? More and more reaction videos, more and more live streamers, stuff like that. But like the Venn diagram of my hobbies is too weird, man. Like I've never met anyone that likes like, you know, 2/3 of what I like. Like a lot of stuff I do is in like very different worlds. Politically homeless anti-war journo. I have some vids on RBN and Due Dissonance. I don't think I know what RBN is, but Due Dissonance I know. That's Russell Dabular, right? I met him once. I actually spoke at the same event as him a summer and a half ago. So it was like a year and a half ago. We both spoke at Rage Against the War Machine 2. And Russell seemed cool. I only talked to, I probably said like 10 words to him. But I like his content. We wouldn't agree on some things, like he's a left-wing dissident and I'm a right-wing dissident, libertarian. But good guy. I mean, we probably agree on almost everything foreign policy and like deep state-wise. So, yeah. Yakuza games on no. Yakuza's like a gang in Japan that has tattoos, right? Like no. I haven't I've been to Japan. I was there for 2 months one time in the summer of 2008 and I had a great time. I love the Japanese people. Japan's one of the coolest cities in the world to go to, by the way, very expensive. But yeah, I never played Yakuza games. Or is that a game of sorts that's not related to Japan? Maybe I just don't know what that is and I sound absurd because of it. I love both metal and jazz a lot. You guys probably know that. You see me wearing metal shirts, but I'm a big jazz fan too, for sure. Like Dizzy Gillespie and Duke Ellington and Cannonball Adderley and Thelonious Monk. Love that stuff. That was the American music, man. Jazz was the American music, and most Americans today have no idea what that is, right? But that was quintessential American greatness as far as music goes before the rock and roll era. I guess rock is too, and country is too. Lots of legendary American music, but jazz came before all that. So I think that's really interesting. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. I appreciate you guys coming out. I hope the subjects were interesting. We'll do live shows, maybe not every week, but many weeks. I hope that it works for you on Fridays and Saturday nights. As you guys know, if you're looking at my live tab on my channel, I have Spike Cohen coming up in, I think, 3 days. Spike was the vice presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party in 2020. Great guy, very good communicator. Gets basically everything right as far as I'm talking about. I think you guys will like him. We'll talk about some interesting subjects, including Epstein, including foreign policy, including debt. Great guy. Spike is the man. I think you guys will really like him in our conversation. And then we have Clint Russell, Liberty Lockdown. I know a lot of you guys know him too. And I think the 16th, I'll be actually in Vegas from the 10th to the 15th, and I come back, and then on the 16th we'll have Clint Russell on. You guys know him from Liberty Lockdown, also another libertarian dissident. He's absolutely fantastic. He has worked for a long stretch before his kind of early retirement in the real estate industry, knows a lot about the financial markets. He also has followed Epstein and Charlie Kirk and U.S. foreign policy like me. I think you're going to dig him. I hope that you enjoy that. Mama07, really appreciate you. And grew up on Meshuggah. Yeah, there's some Swedish metal there. Meshuggah's all right. I never got as into them as, like, say, other Swedish metal like Opeth and Therion and At the Gates and In Flames and Dark Tranquility and Soilwork, but Meshuggah's all right too. But all right, thank you guys so much. Thanks for being here. I hope you guys have an awesome evening, and just thank you so much for all you do and for supporting the channel. Hope you guys have a happy new year. And yeah, cheers to you and your family. I just can't wait to see how they spin this thing.
War wasn't always the American way.
I don't blame people for being skeptical of any FBI narrative. We have a mass noticing going on. This presidential administration hasn't enacted the agenda it campaigned on.
If
Wars can be started by lies. Peace can be started by truth.
No more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire.
Thanks for watching Liberty Vault with Dave Benner. Be sure to like and subscribe to help fight the Mockingbird algorithm. Click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And until next time,
No more war, no more debt, no more inflation,